light. It's just the way that optics work. So you should always cross-check your work to make sure your work looks good. And that way, in the event that you missed a high in this light or a low, that light might pick it up, and you don't want the client to be able to circle around their vehicle and all of a sudden see some of your unfinished work. So cross-checking, real important, like I said. So here's your dent. If you've got a low, let's say your low is this direction, it's an oval. Well, if it's parallel to the same direction as the light, which is that one in back, you're gonna probably see it. But let's say I got a low that's kind of this direction. If it's perpendicular to the light, you may just see a little bit of an S, but you might not pick it up. But all of a sudden you move the light in parallel to that direction, you see another low, it's like, uh-oh, I've got a low here I need to take out. And the same thing goes for highs. But lows, by far, the most important reason to cross-check your work. One direction, then go 90. You don't have to go circle the whole dent, go all the way around it. That's kind of overkill. But if you go one direction, then go 90 degrees to that, and it checks out where the light's nice in both directions, you know your work's done. All right, so now we're gonna do an intermediate dent, and that's gonna be with the golf ball. So I've got the golf ball in hand. Hopefully you've got a golf ball. And let me backtrack. After you've done this soft dent, it's probably a good idea if you do, let's say between 6 and 10 of these. When you can get these out, once again, to about 90%, where you don't have any major high spots, then it's okay to progress and go to doing the intermediate dents. And actually, I'm going to demonstrate one other thing before we go to intermediate dents. I'm going to go back into our workspace. When you first do your first soft dent, what we sometimes do for students that are struggling, I'm going to go and show you how to do this. I call this creating a cactus garden. It's going to be when you made the high spots in your circles and your dots and your creases, the same idea is to just go ahead and go into the circled area where the dent's at and go and over push. Push in some high spots, but make sure they're within the perimeter of your dent. This isn't to make the dent look pretty, but it's really just to really nail down and identify where you're at. So right now I put in probably, I'm gonna say 3, 6, there's 10 or so high spots in this area now. Yes, they're high, and yes, it's textured up. And we wouldn't want to leave our work like this, although if you've been in the business, you've probably seen people do work like that. But I want you to over push on your first dent or two, just to give you an idea about how to locate yourself in your dent, and then back it off like we did in the second one. This is basically the same idea when we were pushing up high spots in our circles, but doing this in a dent a couple times, like I said, I call it the cactus garden. You can call it whatever you want. But it's not to finish out your dent, it's just to help you identify where your tool is at in a three-dimensional plane. And once you push out these little cactus gardens, a couple of these, back down your pressure, go much more tame, much more soft, and then do your work like you saw me do in the demonstration. And go smooth and slow. Slow will get you the worm every time. If you rush your way through, I always say slow is fast and fast is slow. And the reason being is because if you take your time and go out of the gate properly, you're gonna finish up faster than if you rush it. But at the same time, don't go so slow that you're not seeing where you're at. And that's why we try to do the cactus garden, because we want you to be aggressive to the point where you know what's going on, you see your tool tip, and then you can back down the pressure. All right, do you see those high spots in the camera? Okay, good. Let's do our intermediate dent. Let's find some real estate on this hood that looks like it's clean. So we got a spot maybe right back here. I'm gonna take my golf ball, I'm gonna make maybe a centimeter, or there we go. In the light, you probably will notice that the dent is a little bit deeper. It's got more of a darker shadow in it. The deeper the dent is, typically the more difficult it's gonna be for students, and for techs for that matter. But sometimes the more focused and sharp your dent is, the easier it can be for an accomplished tech, because if he does precise hits, it takes less hits to finish the dent. Less hits means less time, which means less work, which means more profit for you. So sometimes when you get really good at this, you actually will hope for sharper dents, because it just requires less time and less work, and you can go through it. And this is typical of like a route tech. A route PDR tech can go through and knock out a lot full of dents in no time, whereas a hail tech, if he's got 60 or 100 dents on a panel, or 200, there's no real shortcuts aside from using a lot of tape and a soft tool, because he's still got a lot of pushes because of the surface area and the dents spread out. So know that when you're doing route work, if it's a lot of Dohertings and stuff, you can make pretty quick work of that if you know what you're doing and you're able to get your tip right where you want to be. So here we go. We've got our intermediate dent. We made it with a golf ball. I'm going to take a little bit of tape now. We didn't do this at the beginning, but But I'm gonna go and put a layer or two of tape on my tool tip here. I'm gonna soften it up. And if you've done 6 to 10 dents, like I mentioned earlier, the soft ones, you should have a pretty good eye by now on how to identify your tool. And I'm just gonna throw some tape on here. This is gonna soften my tool up, and we're gonna slowly start to minimize the potential for making heavy texture. And don't forget, PDR is really about texture, like I said. And the more you can optically blend in the natural inherent texture that the panel you're working on, whether it's a Ford or a repaint or import, whatever. Every car they're like snowflakes. They all have different texture. And the lighter the texture, more of a challenge it is for you to create a dent that goes away versus heavy texture. Like a brand new car with a brand new paint job, no sun fading, never been buffed. The texture can be really heavy. It can be like heavy bumps like rocker shoot or cottage cheese. And that's what you love, because when we're doing our work in and out of that heavy cottage cheese, you know, it's just a walk in the park. But on this hood, if you look at the edge of the light, which Tim will demonstrate for you, you know, wherever he's at, the texture is very light. This Lexus has got some years on it. It's been buffed quite a bit. And when we don't have a lot of texture, it's super important to go real light. And even if you've got depth and you've got to create more texture to hide your stretch material, you may even have to wet sand a little bit to cut this back down to get it to block back in and match up with the natural texture on the panel you're working on. So just to recap, when you got heavy texture, that's a PDR dream. When you got light texture, it's just the opposite. It's a nightmare. So, all right, so I got my tool. It's still a blade. I've got a couple layers of tape on it. Hopefully you do too, and you're ready to go. Here's our dent. Film man Tim is still gonna put the light right through the center of the dent. It's gonna read just like our last one did. It's just gonna look a little darker. And if you're really looking at it, it looks like it might be like an X-ray to a knee joint or something bizarre like that. You're looking at it right. It's just because you're getting more reflections now because the center of this thing is deeper. So the same rules still apply. We want to be in the center third of this dent. Not crucial we're in dead middle, but center third. If you're pushing out here on the edges, you could potentially fold this in and create a lot of extra stress in the center. The depth is what's holding this, the center of this dent, and where the depth is what's holding the dent. So center third of this is where you want to be. All right. So Tim, if you can go to my right, come around here. All right. So same rules apply, guys. We're dragging, going in and out. And if you got tape on this for the first time, you might be saying, I'm not seeing quite as easy as I was. Well, like I said before, sharper the tool, the easier it is to see your drag when you push up. All right, so now I'm gonna go into my drag. And I'm gonna slowly start pushing up. When I slowly start pushing up, the first indicator when you got a deep dent is uniformly, like a camera aperture, you wanna see that thing shrinking. Before you even start to see your tool come up like you did on the soft one where it's real shallow, when it's shallow and you see a little movement, it's immediate because you're so close to the surface. This little lake here has got some depth in it. So the idea is initially, I'm not gonna see that tip come right out of the pool like you did earlier. So a lot of people struggle with the sharper dents because they're looking for that immediate gratification. It's not gonna happen right now. So we're gonna watch this thing shrink uniformly. On the opposite spectrum of that, let's just see, I see one side just pulling. Well, guess what? You're too far to that side. You wanna see everything pulling together uniformly. And to demonstrate right now, that's what you're seeing right now. Let's say I pull to the front. If you look, all we don't see the back doing anything, we see the light pulling off to the front of the dent. So that's wrong. So you can either just guesstimate your way back into the middle, or you can drag yourself back into the middle and try to time your drag. Either way, when you're pushing, you want to see that dent shrink uniformly. All right, so after you push and you see it shrinking uniformly, getting smaller all the way around, then when you get closer to the surface, you want to look for that tool tip. And right now, we're just about center. So I'm just going to put a couple hits right in and around the middle portion of the dent. And that's coming up pretty nice. Probably hit it about 8 or 10 times so far. And if you notice, this dent's coming out really fast, even though it's deep and it's got more stretch. And the reason is, guess what? The tape. We have a broader tip, it's pushing more surface area. And you can see right here that the tip's starting to cut through a little bit, but even just those 2 layers of duct tape made a dramatic difference as far as how it moves metal. So right now, going back to the dent, Tim, take a look at it. Put the edge of the light right to the center of it. I see a little bit of a low still. You picking that from the camera, or does it look real straight?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay, good. So, put a couple more hits right in the middle there. How's it looking in the camera?
It's looking good.
Okay. So, with my first 10 or 15 hits, and right now I'm going to say I probably put another maybe 10. This is pretty darn close. Slight wave. A little bit of texture. That looks pretty good. And like I said, probably 20 hits on this one compared to the 30, 40, 50, 60 hits on the first one we did. And the idea is there's more depth, and if I had the tooltip untaped, it probably would have taken a similar amount of hits. But having tape or a cap on these, intermediate, not super sharp creases, which we'll do in a little bit, but for these intermediate dents, this is going to help you out a lot. And if you look on the edge of the light here, there's still no heavy texture. The idea is the texture blends in real nice, and that's the whole goal. We're trying to sell our work, and we're artisans here, and the more we can blend our texture in with what's inherent is going to make for a happy client, whether it's a retail client or a wholesale client. I mean, everybody appreciates good work. So it's up to you to decide what kind of work you're going to do for who, but we try to do good work for all of our clients, because that way, whenever I do a dent personally, I mean, I take great satisfaction in it, and as a master level tech, this is like art, and I'm signing my name to every dent I do. So if I do good work and I go the extra mile, I don't care if it's on a Subaru or a Ferrari, whatever, then I know that whoever knows that that's my work, they're going to respect what I do, and I'll get more referrals and create a good name for myself. So we just did an intermediate dent. We used a golf ball. We used a baseball on our first one. You can see this is a lot flatter and more soft angled object to make a softer, shallower dent. This has a lot more angle on it, so it's going to make for a deeper dent, which you saw in the light. Now we're going to take a tap down, and we're going to make a very sharp dent. The good news about sharp dents is when they're done right, they come out quick. The bad news is when they don't, they don't. And you have to take your time and center yourself up. So once again, I'm finding myself some clean metal under the hood here. Located a spot. So there's my sharp dent. A little bit more. There we go. That's got a lot of depth in it. And like I said, I apologize. I never went to art college, so you have to excuse my artist renderings. But here's a side view of like a conical or cone-shaped dent, which is kind of just basically what the tap down just did. It created like a triangular deep dent. And the idea on this is you want to be dead center. If you're not dead center, you're basically going to start to fold this in. It's what you started to see on your last intermediate dent is first few pushes were so deep that we want to make sure the dent starts to close up like a camera aperture evenly. But if you see any anomaly or anything that's odd, like a flat edge to the dent, or you see a little tooth start to come off, or a little extra point come off, something that's odd is telling you something's wrong with the light here. Guess what? You're off to the side of the dent in any direction, and you need to move opposite of that direction just a little bit and then re-push again. So we call this, when you were actually reading the edge of the dent instead of the depth of the dent, when you would do on soft dents, we call this edge reading. And edge reading is critical for sharp dents. And in the sharp dent families, you've got creases and body lines. And this right here is just a poked in, pointy sharp dent. Almost, you'll see these sometimes if you're at dealerships, the detailers will take the wash wand and they'll accidentally poke it into a panel, or sometimes you'll see 22 bullets sometimes hit cars that are real deep and sharp like this. But anyway, so there it is. Same reading idea. I'm actually going to raise our light back up too to help illuminate this. But same idea. Center third, preferably right at the pinpoint of the dent. And we're going to read the edge and make sure we're not off to the side. So I'll raise the light back up. The idea for raising the light back up is to, like I said, help illuminate the depth of the dent. And once it starts to come out, we'll move the light back a little bit. Okay. We switch sides by chance? Can you see to the right?
Yeah.
All right, same rules apply, people. Start your drag, in and out. And when you start to push, I'm going to purposely push off to the side for a minute. Okay, right now I'm off to the right side. And I can see a little bit of pinching going to the right side. I don't see the whole dent. I see the whole dent moving a little bit. I see this going on. But then in the last little bit, I see it pinching to the right. And it's subtle. So don't beat yourself over the head if you're not seeing what I'm talking about readily. But I'm off to the right now. Right outside of the perimeter, as a matter of fact. Okay? Now I'm going to go right to the middle. Notice how the whole dent's shrinking. Then I release it, shrinks, and you really don't see anything else going on. That's pretty darn middle. But before I go back to middle, let's go, I'll tell you, I'm not going to tell you. I'm just going to start pushing somewhere. Let's see if you guys pick it up. Push and hold. Push, hold, release. Push, hold, release. That was in front. Here's to the left side. And here's out to the kind of the back right. So all those were off point. Okay, so now I'm going to shift. This thing's so sharp you can almost feel the tip of it on the tip of the tool. So I'm going to push this. You'll see it shrinking down. See how it goes uniformly all together like that. And I release it, it comes back up, and we've taken out a little bit of it. So now I'm going to push a little bit more. And let me tell you right now, when you're doing a sharp dent, see how small that gets? I'm in the center, I'm going to release it. When you're doing it, I'm going to take a moment here to talk. When you're doing a sharp dent and it's got a lot of depth, sometimes it's a necessary evil to over push it, to get that center to come up, to release. And if you've got to over push it to get the middle out and then tap it back down, the next time you tap it back down, it's going to be shallower unless you overcompensate it huge. The idea is, like I said, to get that middle up. Soft dents, technically, if you're making high spots, those are mistakes. And that's fine, that's part of training. But if you see an experienced tech working on soft dents, if he's making high spots, something's wrong. The train's off the tracks. When you're doing intermediate dents, typically the same rule applies. But when you get to sharp dents, this is where, just like with creases or bylines, sometimes you have to over push to get the center to release. And then when you push it back down, you'll push it just back down a fraction. And you've got a dent that's much more shallow. And then after one or two or a small handful of times of up and down flattening the metal, at that point you should be good to go. And your dent should look like mine. All right, so let's bring the camera back in. Our dent right now is about the size of a BB. Before it was maybe dime size or so. So I'm going to go right back to it. I'm going to slowly push up. And if I make a high spot in the center, that's okay. I'm just going to keep pushing until this thing either releases or we're done. See how small it's getting? It's tiny. And that's pretty close. I see a little wrinkle in there. Okay. All right. It's got a baby high spot in there. Baby. We probably could either block that or most people wouldn't even see that. But I do want to make mention about one other thing. Speaking of high spots, when you've got this extra material in such a narrow area, and the same thing goes for a crease, your crease area, you have a lot of stretched material in a very narrow area. The idea is this material right here, we've got to hide all this stretched material, this metal. If we were to straighten out, if we were to cut this out and put it above where it used to fit between here and here, well, now it's here to here. So guess what? Because there's so much material that's stretched in such a narrow area, what does that mean? It means heavier texture. We got away with murder here because I just happened to hit dead center on it and I had a good tool tip and it just wasn't quite deep enough that we had to worry too much about it, but it does have a little tiny bit of texture. That's why you see that baby high spot there. But the deeper this goes, the more material and the you have to hide and the more texture you're going to have that's inherent. So don't beat yourself up if you're working on a crease or a deep dent and it's in a real sharp, deep, narrow area. That metal's got to go somewhere. So it's part of the process. If you see heavier texture and you got to come back and wet sand it or block it, like I said, this isn't an issue with you. This is a PDR issue and it's a metal and paint issue. There's physics to paint and metal that we all have to play by, the rules. And like I said, there's extra material that's got to go there. That's why in this dent, I'm having a hard time even finding it right now. When we worked on the dent earlier, there's a tiny, tiny baby high spot in there. And that idea is because of all this stretched material, I had to go somewhere with it. Either leave it in like a small fisheye low or a baby high. Normally it's better to leave a little bit of a low, but that high was so minor. Like I said, we wanted to block it. If we had a client that we knew that might be really particular, well, it might not be a bad idea just to block it out real lightly. So anyway, so that was a sharp dent. Like I said, you saw how we did it. Another thing to consider too is sometimes when they're really sharp, these dents, you might take it up in thirds, in sections. So the first third might come up where you're watching the camera aperture shrink down, and then stop, open it up with your tap down, which means kind of tap down around the outside edge, and you're taking these V-shaped dents, and by tapping them down and pushing up in sections, what you're going to do is you're going to make them turn into U's, and then pretty soon they're going to be shallow, soft dents. Okay, it's a progression, but that's tapping down on the perimeter on the rim, and then pushing up, tapping down, opening it up. This one wasn't that deep and that big, and it didn't require me to open it up and do it in sections like this. But when you get deep dents that are really deep, I mean even deeper than that, sometimes it's necessary to open them up a little bit at a time. And over pushing is also part of the process too. Getting that center to release, getting it to come up, and then hiding all this extra material in that narrow area. Like I said, it's tough, but as you could tell from timing out and watching how many pushes it took on these sharper ones, the intermediate and the sharp one versus soft, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Sharp dents come up fast when you're good and you're precise. If you get off the mark, you might be chasing yourself for a while, and that's okay. Now, before you progress and start doing creases, which we're going to go on to here in a little bit, crease dents are very difficult. But nonetheless, it's the same idea as what this kind of dent we just made with the tap down, just drawn out though. So it's just an elongated cone style type dent. So on these, let's say, I would say you should probably do 15 to 20 sharp dents with your tap down before you go on to creases, okay? So we've done our softs, we've done our intermediates, you've paused the video, you've gone through, you've done all this practice. We literally could be talking days here. Normally, our students, they're doing soft intermediates, they're probably Tuesday, Wednesday in an accelerated 1-week class. So right now we probably are coming up on an hour with a video, but this literally is probably 2 to 2.5 days worth of work. If I'm training a student and we're going through these things, each dent might take them an hour to 2 hours. We've had students 3 or 4 hours on one dent, and they'll take breaks and they want a new dent because they're sick of looking at the same panel. But guess what? That's how you learn. You learn by working through it. You don't just throw away the baby in the bathwater. You got to get going, and you got to try to work your way through the dents, and you work until they get hammered or they're done. And that's the key. So like I said, at any time, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you have a question, pause it, give us a call, and we will answer all your questions. Trust me, we've been doing this for years, and we know what we're doing. So, all right. So like I said, soft dents, check. Intermediate dents, check. Sharp dents, check. You're probably on to your, like I said, second, coming up on your third day of training. So now we're going to go to creases. Take your sharp tool and once again, find an open area of metal. And I got one over here. And I'm just going to draw maybe about a 2-inch crease into the metal. When I say draw, I'm going to take my tap down. I'm going to use the edge of it. I don't know if the camera can get it from the, maybe come on the left side over here too. I'm going to put pressure, and then I'm going to drag into the metal. That didn't go deep enough, so I'm going to do it again. I'm making these Lexuses more strong these days. How about one more time, kids? It's better. All right. Now I'm going to throw a little compound on that because I got some tape residue. Not so much compound. And if you're lucky enough to have a little Matco polisher, what we use for hail, button back off. We love this little tool. If you're interested in getting one, give us a call. We use the wool pad when we're buffing a lot of paint. They also have a foam pad for this too. Rechargeable battery, lithium with it. All right, so cameraman, come over here and take a look at the light. I'm going to adjust the light just a little bit because the crease end goes at an angle. I'm going to parallel that same angle. Parallel meaning I'm going to follow the same direction. You see that on the edge of the light? They're kind of tricky to see.
You can see it in the shadow.
In the shadow? Yeah, wherever. If the fixture shows it better than the light, show it in the fixture. The fixture meaning the grayish reflection. Wherever you see it best. You need to zoom in a little bit. Can you zoom in tighter? There you go. Just like that. That's good. Yep. There you go. What do you think? All right, there you go. Yep, there it is.
Cool.
Okay. So like I said, I've used the tap down and I drug it with the edge. You can use a screwdriver handle edge too. Not the actual tip of the screwdriver, but the actual handle works nicely. And make yourself a crease. This one goes from here to here. It's about, at the widest spot, about a 1/4 inch wide. And at the ends, it kind of gets a little bit narrower. All right, so creases. You want to back that up for just a second, and then I'll have you line it back in again. I'll give you plenty of time, so there's no rush. All right, so where we go? There she is. All right, so the crease about over here, ends about over here. Okay. I'm going to lower the light down a little bit too. That'll probably help you illuminate a little bit. Crease is just like the sharp dents that we made when we used the tap down to poke into the panel. They require you to be dead center. Just like we talked about at the beginning of the video, when you're doing your fake creases with the lines, the 2-dimensionals, you want to stitch it, which means you want to find yourself on the outside edge and walk the middle radius. Basically like a hair. If you're off the dent, you have to start over and open it back up, take down your any highs, and go to town. This is a pretty soft crease too. I mean, I had tape on the tap down that kind of helped me not make too deep of a crease. So we may do another one after this just to make something a little bit sharper. All right, so I'm gonna take the tape off the tool. I could probably use the tape on this, at least one layer, because it's not that sharp and deep of a crease. But just for help of seeing it in the video, I'm gonna go naked tool. All right, so right now, I'm gonna start on the right side. Let me know when you got this actually illuminated in the camera. I'm gonna start to the right side of the crease, just outside. I'm gonna drag. So I'm dragging to the right side of that crease. And I'm gonna push to what I determine to be the radius, and then I'm gonna start walking myself. Can you see it? The dent itself? Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm gonna start walking my way into that crease. And I'm trying to push up that shadow in the middle of that crease until it's filled with white light and there's no more shadow. I don't want to over push, but like I said earlier, when you're doing sharp dents, sometimes that happens. Don't kill yourself over it. It's not a big deal. It's part of training. If I had $1 for every high spot students made, I wouldn't be making this video. All right, so we're about 2/3 of the way through this crease. I'm filling up that shadow with white light. I'm looking for every little point that comes up out of the shadow. There's no reason to rush. Take your time. That looks pretty good. Going back over it again, I think I see a couple spots in the middle that I hit real lightly. But for the most part, I give it an 85, 90 percentile. Now to finish that, because we got most of the depth out, I'd move the light back and down. Trim it out like we talked about earlier. Get a more of a glancing read, because the depth of the dent, it's flatter now. So we're gonna put the light down to help skim it and get the last little details. So I'll move the light back and down a little bit. I don't know if the camera's gonna pick it up because it's real light. Let's see. You seeing that at all?
It's hard to see.
Yeah. I mean, back here behind the camera, about 2 feet, I still see it. But the camera's not illuminating it really well. But they're kind of go back and forth with the edge of the light. All right. Still catching any of it at all? Up the edge, a little bit of a shadow?
It's hard to get the angle right.
Right. Yeah. Just a little bit. You just barely see it in the camera. You just see a little shadow. Yeah, let's not worry about it. What we'll do is we're going to make another crease now. Make it a little bit deeper. I'll take the tape off my tap down. And I'll make it right in front of that other crease we just made. And then we'll raise the light back up so we get the proper angle. Okay, there we go. Pretty nasty crease. It's probably about 2.5 to 3 inches wide. It's got a little jog in it. The same idea. I mean, you've got a lot of stretched metal in a very narrow area. So what that means is a byproduct of that stretched material, since it's deeper and it's in a very tight area, is you're going to have more texture. And the idea is to do your best job of trying to hide that texture. But ultimately, you just want to get the stretched material up and flat. If it's got a lot of texture, you can always wet sand it or work the metal a little bit. All right, so I'm going to be off to the right side. I'm going to drag. I'm pushing right at the radius of it. If the camera's picking out, I'm literally at the entryway to this crease. Almost like it's like an earthworm, right? Its mouth, not the other end, folks. All right, so there we are. So I'm going to try to walk that radius. What I'll do is, because this has a lot of depth, I'm going to take a couple passes on this. So I'm just going to push up maybe half of it, like I talked about earlier about doing these things in phases or steps, and then we'll come back and take another pass. So I'm to the first jog. Now I'm kind of working my way back left. You know, notice when I push, everything pulls together. It pulls together. I don't have one side pushing and the other side not doing anything. That's the indicator that tells me, you know what, I'm middle. I'm not off. Okay, we're now at the back end. I'll let you decide what you call that end, since it's not the mouth. And I pushed up a lot of that just to kind of finish just the end of it only. And you'll notice it's a little textury, but it's not bad. Okay, so now from the left side going right, I'm going to work my way back. How's the crease looking in the light? That's good?